Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to this Tuesday, February 25th, 2025 business meeting agenda of the Oyster Bay East Norwich School District. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ms. Santos, correspondence?
124, Nora Windhausen, MS Basketball. 127, Lindsay Schnecker, regarding a question. 128, Nora Windhausen, regarding MS Basketball. 131, Tom Windhausen, regarding update written request. 214, Lindsay Schnecker, regarding a question. 123 through 224, 45 emails from Heather Nadalny and George Diebold regarding various subjects.
Thank you, Ms. Santos. I'd like to turn this over now to Dr. Yanni for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Kowalski, and good evening, everybody. I hope everybody had a wonderful winter break. I'm sure it went too fast, but as I was visiting all the schools today, all the students were happy to be back and be with their friends and our teachers. Tonight, I am deeply honored to share a truly remarkable achievement by two of our exceptional students. Adrian Kim and Brandon Antonetti have been named finalists in the 2025 National Merit Scholarship Program. This prestigious recognition is a testament of their tremendous dedication to academic excellence and their extraordinary potential for future success. The National Merit Scholarship Program, as many of you know, is a highly competitive process that begins with approximately 1.3 million juniors from 21,000 high schools nationwide. And to advance, Adrian and Brandon not only demonstrated exceptional performance on the PSAT, but also validated those results with outstanding SAT scores. Furthermore, they presented an exemplary academic record, earned the strong endorsement of their high school, and submitted a comprehensive application that showcased their rigorous coursework, extensive extracurriculum and volunteer involvement, and compelling personal essays. Out of the initial pool of 1.3 million students, approximately only 15,000 have achieved the finalist status. This means that Adrian and Brandon are among the top 1.1% of high school students in the country. I am so proud, the board is so proud, we are so proud as a community because this is an amazing accomplishment. So I want to congratulate Adrian and Brandon. The athletic department had a wonderful winter season. I'm happy to share that every winter varsity team have achieved a scholar athlete team. The fall had the same thing, so we are in line for the highest, but I don't want to jinx myself, I'm very superstitious, so they're doing very well, doing very well on the court, on the field, but also in the classroom. In terms of some of the teams, I know that next week we'll have next board meeting we'll have a full report, but I want to congratulate the girls and boys varsity fencing team who had a dominating presence at the Nassau County Individual Championship Tournament. Gabby Sherlock took home the title of county champion in foil. I'm also excited to share that the fencing community has honored Coach John Bruckner by naming a county sportsmanship award in his name, and Oyster Bay was the first recipient of that, which was great. Congratulations to the competitive cheerleading team who advanced to the semifinal at the last trip that they had at the Orlando and the USCA, and placed second in the Nassau County Class B Championship the following weekend. The varsity boys track and field 4x800 meter relay composed of Zach Green, Alex Arnados, James Salvato, Anthony Izquierdo and Alexander Streich advanced to the New York State Championship with a time of 8:49 at the state qualifier, which was impressive. They will compete Saturday, March 8 in Staten Island. And I also want to congratulate Olivia Garcia of the varsity winter team track and field, who was named the Class C County Championship in the shot put. The varsity wrestling team had an outstanding weekend at the county wrestling tournament on February 14th and 15th. Colton Schmiesing took home the title of county champion for the 108 weight class, and this is the second year in a row that is achieving this major accomplishment. The championship will take place Saturday in Albany, so we're wishing Colton lots of luck. Girls and boys varsity basketball team have also advanced the semifinals, and then we'll report on their great results. When you think of a school this small and you think about all this accomplishment, it's quite impressive what you do in the classroom and on the field. So I'm so proud of you. We are so proud of you. My last piece is the science fair was the 7th grade science fair was great to see parents and students showcasing their projects. We attended, and it was nice to have them explain all the projects. And I was driving home and I was thinking to myself, I wish when I was in 7th grade I was able to do that. So a big thank you to all the teachers and the volunteers of the Honor Society for judging their projects. It was great to see the parents attending. Always a great event when we have parents, teachers, all together, students. It really shows that we are a big family. And at this point, I know we are prepared. Maybe I'm taking too much time, but I'm going to invite Miss Erica Geopak to the podium to introduce some of our stars.
All right, so first I have to ask you to take your field trip, everyone on the dais, down here and right into the sectioned off area in front so you can get the best view possible. Okay, thank you so much. So this evening you are going to see an excerpt from this year's high school musical production, which is The Addams Family. And if you don't know about this musical, you might just be familiar with the Addams Family from the various iterations over the years. But this story focuses around Wednesday Addams, who's growing up and falling in love with a normal boy, someone very different from the rest of her family. And it's kind of just about navigating these differences and challenges between families, but still keeping those eccentric family traditions alive and well. And the story is told kind of almost by this Greek chorus, which are all the ancestors of the Addams who come to life. So when you come to see the show and they're in costume, you might see like a hippie, or you might see like a caveman. It's basically all the Addams from the different parts of history. So some of them have some really interesting characters that they've all individually embodied. So throughout this production and throughout this process, our students really got to learn the true meaning of the word ensemble, and that the whole is definitely greater than the sum of its parts. Our students have taken part in so many facets of this production, everything behind the scenes, from scenic construction, design, painting, prop making, sounds, lighting, marketing, headshot photography. The list goes on. And of course, our onstage performers who are singing, acting, dancing, and playing. I like to give my stats. This is my math time, so let me revel in it. Last year at this time, we had 54 students involved in Chicago the Musical. And this year, at the very same time, we have 73 students involved, which is a 35% increase from last year. So I'm really proud of that. And before we bring our amazing students to the stage, I want to thank all the people in the village who helped to make this production possible. There are so many incredible, passionate adults behind the scenes, so I want to just take some time to introduce them. Before I do that, I want to thank everyone on the board, Dr. Yanni, Ms. Rayner, my amazing clerical and custodial staff here at the school, and all the families who get your children to and from rehearsals, because we definitely could not do this without your support. So without further ado, help me in welcoming our artistic team, starting with our newest, Miss Divine, who helped with the music and vocals. Followed by Miss Rondazzo, who helped with the art and design crew. You all know Mr. Dolan up in the balcony. And the Bayman backstage crew, which are our pivotal crew that makes the show run. Of course, we have Mr. Sissia here, who led our pit. Miss Kemp, our assistant director of the show. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Chiapardi, our fearless director and choreographer. So please join us on Friday, March 7th at 7:30, or Saturday, March 8th at 5 p.m. And I know it's going to be a spooktastic night of musical theater. So without further ado, please allow our students to haunt you with their performance of When You're in Adams. Enjoy.
The intoxicating smell of the graveyard. Once a year, we gather beneath our family tree to honor the great cycle of life and death. Come, every member of our clan, living, dead, and undecided, and let us celebrate what it is to be an Adams. Come to me, my luscious wife, oh, she of skin so pale, eyes so black, and dress cut down to Venezuela, and show us what it is that every Adams hopes for.
Darkness, grief, and unspeakable sorrow.
I love it when you talk sexy. Bunny hop. Do the twist. Rigor mortis. Death rattle.
When you're an Adams, you have a very special duty.
Late night out with the Adams.
When you're an Adams, you're obligated to the clan.
It's family first and family last and family by and by. When you're an Adams, you said that just don't apply. When you're an Adams, you do what Adams do or die.
Thank you, everyone. That was just a little snippet of what's looking ahead for you. So we'd love for you to join us on either Friday or Saturday. And on Saturday night, we are having a costume contest. So come in your best Adams attire to show us what you got. Thank you very much. We appreciate all your love and support through the year. So we look forward to seeing you then. And Board of Ed, thank you. We're just going to get out of your way first.
Ms. Raynor, it's going to be very tough to do a budget presentation after this, but at this point, I would like to invite Ms. Raynor, our Deputy Superintendent, to discuss the budget, the second budget presentation, and also want to thank you for all the work that you're putting into getting ready together with Zach Nyberg, our Executive Director for Finance. Zach, stand up, just let everybody see you. There you go. That's Ms. Raynor is all yours.
Can you hear me? There you go. I would say he's the man behind the curtain, but it's really the man behind the spreadsheet, we say at the business office. So yes, I don't know how I'm going to follow that. That was quite an amazing performance, but we like to say that we have a good part of making sure that they have everything they need to do that as part of the budget. So tonight, I am definitely pleased to present the second budget presentation this evening. We are going to review the vision, the mission, the focus, talking about a little bit about preparing the budget, specifically tonight, focusing on the allowable tax levy and an overview of our revenue budget and really decide some of the big factors in that number. So going into the vision, obviously our budget follows the district's vision of empowering all students to achieve excellence. When we develop the budget, we are keeping our mission to advance the Oyster Bay East Norwich District as a model of excellence and innovation, providing exceptional opportunities and outcomes for all of our students while partnering with our community and staff to ensure thoughtful management of our resources and investments in our future. Our focus has remained throughout this whole budget season to be within the allowable tax levy cap, which you will see tonight we are. Strategically aligning our resources, specifically to foster our student growth and success, making sure we're using our capital reserves and our budget allocations, investing in our facilities to support the work we're doing with our 21st Century Bond Project, as well as to prioritize safe, efficient, and future-ready learning environments. And of course, promote our fiscal responsibility, which we've seen over the past few years has been extremely important with our spikes in CPI. Going into the budget preparation, it's really important to discuss the tax levy cap that comes from the Office of State Comptroller. There's always a big discussion and confusion regarding the 2% tax cap. So the consumer price index this year is 3.3%. That is not what our allowable tax levy factor is. The allowable levy growth factor, as determined by the state, is the lower of the number of the rate inflation and 2%. So this year you can see CPI at 3.3 means we have to use the lower number, which is the 2%. Here you can see a historical look over this. This gives us the CPI has been fluctuating. Obviously, anybody who's followed, especially the past 2 years, we've saw it spike over 7%. Although it is down this year, it's still significantly over our 2% tax cap. So we are facing our expenses, as we all are at home as well, expenses over 2% at 3.3 on average, but we are capped at that 2%. So again, just to give some historical background, here you can see the difference of The CPI in green, the levy in red, and the budget change from 2011 to 2021. You can see it's fairly stable where they do align those three numbers. However, when we look at the years from 2021 right through to the current year, you can see that spike that we've seen. They are no longer aligned. And again, this really does become extremely important when we want to maintain and enhance programs while making sure that we are proactively planning to keep a strong financial state of the district. So despite this increase in CPI, we have been able to maintain a consistent levy, which you see that red line along the bottom. In the prior years, you can also see here that not only the past 4 budgets we've had a significant turnout, but we can see that we have maintained that levy consistently within that allowable levy limit. So let me go a little bit more into depth about what the levy limit is. It's what allows us to, what we calculate, let me say, to determine the amount of revenue the district is able to propose as part of our annual revenue budget. This formula is determined by the New York State Office of Comptroller. It is calculated based on several items you can see here, which I'll go into more depth in the next few slides, but the outcome of this calculation is what's referred to as the allowable tax levy. This is a multi-step formula, which I'll go over in the next few slides. It's important to know that it is the same formula across New York State, but every district will have different results on what that allowable levy limit will be. Even though we're all using the 2% cap as that one number, the actual outcome of the tax formula will be different for each. Every district is required to submit this by March 1st to the comptroller, which is why this is important that these numbers are presented this evening. So the formula really takes into account the prior year's tax levy, the tax-based growth factor, pilots we have in our district, capital exclusions, and of course that allowable tax levy growth factor I just discussed at 2%. That's what gives us our allowable levy for the entire year. So going through a couple of these pieces, the detail about the tax-based growth factor is the key component. As you can see, it's the first multiplier up here. It accounts for the physical increases in the taxable property base, such as new constructions and improvements throughout our district. Here we can see over the past couple of years, the number stayed fairly steady for the prior 3 years. This year, it is a pretty significant increase, which is what is changing our tax levy cap for this year. The pilots are another big piece of this. Our pilots have fairly been consistent, but slightly going up, which we are able to get, which are a little bit closer to 900,000, but those are pretty stable. This is the number that I was talking about at the 2%, even though CPI has been 2.3, over 7%, 6.26, 3.3 for this year, we are still capped at 2%. So even though expenses are going up well over the 2%, we are capped on what we can use in this formula for the 2%. The last piece that's a major factor in this formula is our local capital levy share. You can see going from the prior years, slightly over 2 million, 2.09, 2.21, 2.16, 2.16. You can see we're somewhere around the 2.1 number. This is really important, even as Dr. Yanni said 4 years ago in presenting our bond project, the main factor in this line is our debt service. So maintaining a consistent debt service for the district while maintaining or upgrading facilities is really what's important so the community has a very stabilized tax levy, which we've been right on target as we've been discussing over the past 4 years. So that's what brings us to our final number. You can see here at the bottom, that's what that calculation works out to be. So for this year, for the 24-25 school year, our allowable tax levy for the district is 2.91%, which is slightly below a $1.7 million increase budget to budget. So putting this into the revenue budget, when we look at this, simply put, your revenues must equal your expenditures to balance your budget. These are our main categories, as I spoke about last time, on what comprises of our budgets. Tonight's will really focus in depth on the revenue side of the budget. So these are the 3 main categories that bring up our budget. 80% of it does come from our community and our tax levy, which is why it's so important, and the board has been committed to staying within the allowable tax levy cap to understand what that does for the community. So going into more depth, starting with the tax levy, as I just reviewed, the big driving factor on that is going to be the CPI. And again, you can kind of see this graph. I'll revisit this later in the presentation, but CPI has been high, but we've been able to maintain a consistent tax levy, which has been the focus for several years now. Here are the actual numbers of what that means. As I said, it's almost a $1.7 million increase, but tax levy to tax levy from the current year, 24-25, to what we're proposing, it is going up about $1.7 million to have $59,891,222,000. And again, that is within the allowable limit of 2.91%. Going forward into the state aid category, many of you have probably seen in Newsday, the governor did release her budget proposals, I believe right about the time we had presented in January. The good news for Oyster Bay, we were very happy to see that our foundation aid received a 2% increase, which is extremely positive for what we've heard in potential years, especially in last year facing potential cuts. A 2% increase is very positive for our district. The expense-driven aid did go down slightly. However, as we close out these capital bond projects, we do expect that number to come up. Expense-driven aid does include building aid. So again, those projects should be closed and that number will be coming back up. The really important piece for us here, which I'm really happy to talk about tonight, is our UPK aid did go up by over 50%. So now we are receiving UPK aid of just over $1 million. So as Dr. Yanni announced, I believe at one of our previous meetings in January, that as of the February 3rd application deadline, we had received 68 UPK applications. Therefore, as part of this year's budget preparation, we were reviewing class size guidelines as well as current and projected enrollments. So these are the current class size guidelines. Looking forward, looking through TR, you can see it does fluctuate, 89 in kindergarten, 95 in first, and so forth. The actual class sizes can fluctuate anywhere from 15, 19, 18, it goes up a little bit. Even when we look at Vernon, maybe a little bit higher, but still well either below or within the guidelines here. Therefore, what we are looking at and proposing is the consideration in this budget is to increase, because of the increased enrollment and interest in our pre-K program, is to increase the number of pre-K program to 4 full-day sections to allow all 68 applicants have an ability to sit in UPK for next year. So that would, if approved in the budget, that would allow the need to eliminate the lottery at this point, since this proposal would place all 68 students in our program for next year at TR. However, in looking at this, in order to support this increase, we have reviewed the projected enrollment in other grades, and as you saw, some of the class sizes in other grades were a little bit on the lower side, so we were able to then review it and look at the current first grade, the projected first grade and the projected third grade, and reduce each of those by 1 section, still maintaining the lower end of our class size guidelines without increasing that too much. Finally, the third main section of this revenue budget is comprised of our reserves, our fund balance, and our miscellaneous revenue. That includes things such as leasing properties, interest income we have, and other things along that nature. The reserve funds is extremely important. These are reviewed not only by the district, but by the Board of Education each year to make sure we are best using these funds to support the budget, specifically for long-term planning. The balance of each of these funds is presented here, but it's also presented on our financial statements. For those of you who were here back in the fall when our external auditors presented it, they also speak about these, but again, they're reviewed not only at the end of the year with our external auditors, they're reviewed at the time of the budget to make sure we're appropriately using them for our financial condition. This year's proposed budget does include the same amount of appropriated reserves and appropriated fund balance as the prior year, as we're still seeing a little bit of high CPI rates. But again, this chart shows not only the past several years of appropriated fund balance and reserves. You can see that, as I stated earlier, with the increase of CPI, this is a strong reason of why a strong financial health and condition of the district and very strategic long-term planning allows us to offset the increase of CPI that we've seen, because we have this ability to use these reserve funds and fund balances to offset some of those costs. So putting all 3 of those categories together, the tax levy, the state aid, and the other, you can see here, this is our total revenue budget for this year, bringing up to $67,791,061. That is, just about a little over a $2 million increase from the prior year's budget. But again, those are the very specific numbers for this. And as I started this section with, this is the revenue budget, which of course will have to equal the expense side of the budget. So putting it back into the pie chart, you can see again the tax levy is 88%, those numbers from the previous slide, which is again why we're so mindful of how we are presenting this to the community with the tax levy being within the allowable levy cap. So looking forward to the timeline, the next budget presentation will focus on the expenditure, which will balance out to the current revenue budget. And the details of the expenditure budget will be there on March 25th, as well as the capital and technology reserve projects that are going to be proposed, followed by an adoption on April 22nd, budget hearing on May 6th, and concluding with the vote on May 20th. This is the entire timeline that we've been presenting since the beginning of January. This is on our district's website, as well as all the other budget resources we have available. Each of these presentations are on our board docs agenda the day before the meeting. These presentations are available where you can see right here on the screen, as well as all of the information for the budget is continually updated on the district's page under BOE budget. You can see here everything that I've gone over since January, as well as tonight's presentation will be placed there tomorrow. Will be there, as well as on the left you see the archives of all the information that has been over the past 3 years. And that's it for the budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
I had a question about the state aid. That increase, when Newsday reported we had an increase in aid of 7%. A significant amount of that money is through the universal pre-K.
Correct. Largely that was because of the 50% increase in UPK aid. Correct.
Are we able to allocate most of that money for our universal pre-K?
If we move forward with the 4 full-day programs, yes, the majority of that will be used.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anything
Any
else?
questions? Okay, so
Thank
next we'll go on to the capital project. I have a brief update on phase 3, I believe, Mr. Don? Perfect, okay. So as we've been doing, I believe the last time we showed was in December. Since then, hold on. All right, Mr. Don, you might have to help me this. I lost it. Perfect, okay. So as I presented in December, we are starting into phase 3. As we have been discussing over the past fall, yes, we experienced some unforeseen delays through the state approval process, which we couldn't affect, we couldn't change, but we are moving forward. We did award the bids in January and have already broken ground. So yes, we have a revised schedule to be finishing this spring, but we are still significantly under budget. At this point, we're projecting to be a good at least $2 million under. So going back to where we first presented this about 4 years ago, although we have the authority to borrow up to $29.5 million, let's say, we will only be borrowing what we need to complete the projects, and at this point, it's about a good $2 million underneath. So looking specifically at phase 3, which we are now, just as a reminder where that is, that's the current, or actually I should now say previous music rooms in the back where they were last year. The goal was to turn those into a large classroom, a small group instruction, and an additional small group instruction space. Right now, a wall has been built to separate that construction. As I stated back in December, this construction will occur throughout the school year with little to no impact on our students, and you can see that construction area is simply just a simple white wall with the students being able to move throughout the building as typical. From the exterior, a construction fence has been put up to keep the protection between the students and the construction that's going on. However, you can see the way we strategically place that fence, students can still exit the building and use the existing playground space safely separate from the construction. Looking at the athletic complex, again, that's on the other side of the building, closer to Lawn Lane on the opposite side from where the new music wing is. We are looking at the Butler building currently. As you saw, the Butler building, it was only 2/3 of it used for students, other of it was storage and grounds facility work. Now this was the plan to open it back up for full student use. Just to remind you of some renderings that I had showed previously, this is the way the current Butler building looks. The plan is to turn it into a nice athletic complex here. You can start to see on the inside as I move forward. This was just an alleyway for construction for our grounds crew. Now it's turned into a fully open space for our students to be able to use. Looking in the back, we'll also have a nice entryway into our athletic complex in the back, since we do have a nice turf field and track back there, baseball field, softball field, as well as many others. Looking into the inside of the building, you can see here it's severely outdated, but this is what the proposed rendering will look like. Turning back the other way, you can't even see half the building. It is behind doors with storage. It will then open itself up with a projector on the far side. So currently, if you walk down the end of the 5th grade wing, you see a wall at the end to, again, protect the students from any construction work. Although you can see the light right here to that front entranceway, that exit at the end of the hallway is still available to exit to the front of the building. And again, the fencing is protected to keep everybody separate in the back as well. And the gate across the front to keep students out of that area and keep the construction safe inside. Again, here's on the back, keeping it separate from the 6th grade entrance wing, as well as the baseball field throughout. So although we will use the left side of the building around the new music wing, the baseball fields and all the fields throughout this spring will still be able to use. We were careful with how we placed the fencing for that. So that's where we are. We're again very proud to be along, again, slightly delayed, but still significantly under budget, and to have all this project done within this school year. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Rayner. So will the Butler building be done then by spring of 2025?
It should be done by the conclusion of the school year. Maybe a few punch list items over the summer, but most of it will be done hopefully by June.
Okay, and I think it's great that you're under budget, so thank
Yes,
you for that.
significantly, yep.
The board, do you have any other questions?
No, just that it's important to note that the Butler building is delayed because the state did not provide the approvals.
Correct.
There was a delay in the state approvals.
Correct.
That was
We
not
were on-
beyond our control.
Absolutely. We were on time with when we filed everything with the state. It was the delay in getting the approval process, and we made our timeline of when we needed to be up there. We did not expect the delay to happen at the state level. But now that we have approval, we've moved very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, and the renderings look great.
And the other thing, I didn't hear if you noted that we possibly are not going to utilize all the bond proceeds, right?
Correct.
$30 million.
Correct. When the voters approve the 29 and change $million, that authorizes the board to borrow up to that amount, but if we don't spend it, we do not borrow it. So our goal is to borrow under, if not about $27 million at the point, so we will not be borrowing the full amount.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, Dr. Young?
I just want to, great job, Ms. Reno. I just want to point out that with the current proposal that we have, we will not have the lottery schedule for the UPK. Every student that sign up will be automatically in as of right now. And then if we have more students than 18 per class, which is 72, then that will, we put on the wait list, but there will be no lottery as of right now.
Okay, great. Okay, let's move on to approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes as listed and attached below?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to public participation on agenda items. In accordance with, in accordance with the open meetings law, school board meetings where school district business will be discussed are open to the public. The Oyster Bay East Norwich Board of Education welcomes public comment at its meetings. The Board of Education will respond to comments and/or inquiries in the appropriate manner. This portion of the meeting is designed exclusively for agenda items. A sign-in book is provided for those residents wishing to address the board. In order to be recognized, you must be signed in. Each speaker will be allowed a maximum of 3 minutes. The board president will call you to the microphone in the order in which you have signed in. Public discussion is prohibited regarding matters related to an individual's reputation, privacy, or right to due process, which in some way could be violated. A second commentary period is provided for non-agenda items prior to adjournment. We thank you for your participation and cooperation. Has anybody? Is this on agenda items? Ms. Anne Marie Longo.
Bear with me, I'm going to go back and forth. Good morning,
Hi.
good evening. So I just have a couple of questions. So the bond. So on the bond, you're under, you didn't, the Butler Building did not make it on time. So is that, due to the state, is that not eligible for building aid in the future? Once completed because it wasn't completed on time? Or can you fight that because it was a state issue?
No, we will submit for building aid. It has nothing to do with
So
it.
how much building, I mean, is it that based on your presentation, is it that thus far we've received, how much did you say in building aid? You called it, what'd you call building aid? I'm looking at
Building aid?
in your state aid, hold on, let me get to it. You called it,
Foundation aid?
well,
Yeah,
well, you
the
call,
foundation aid is not the building aid. I think maybe that, it's a
No.
confusing term.
no, it's not. I'm not confusing the term.
I'm not saying you are. I think
Basically, the
foundation.
presentation said foundation aid, that's our standard aid. Expense-driven aid, you stated, is that building aid? That's, I think that the explanation you had?
Expense-driven aid has several categories, one of which is building aid, correct?
How much of the 1.4 is building aid? Can you, and what is the other expense-driven aid if it's not state aid?
It could be anything from textbook aid, library aid, so anytime we buy
Okay.
textbooks, we get money back, so there's a whole
Okay.
series of categories on that.
But on the building aid, it's specific to where it could go to the bottom line? Does it go to offset the taxpayers' responsibility on the $27 million of money that we are borrowing?
Expense-driven aid comes back to the district as revenue.
It
So-
doesn't matter, it doesn't offset bond at all? Or can you associate that to offset bond expense?
Well, as part of the whole budget, it's not one for one as per se, it's part of the revenue end of the budget, so yes, the revenue will have to meet the expense equal the same, so it does it indirectly, but it's revenue, not an expense. Debt service is an expense of the budget, where the aid coming in is revenue on the budget.
Right, I get it.
So it does offset it because we have to equal
Could
the
you
two.
break down how much of that is building aid on that expense aid? Is it possible that we could see that? I mean, because we
If
have
there's-
27,
So the question is a breakdown on the expense and driven aid.
how much of it is expense-driven aid?
How
So,
much is-
and how much of the expense-driven aid is building aid, is the question. Let me ask the question.
Yeah, we
UPK
can provide that
aid of $1 million?
I think $2 million, $2.5 million is a pretty
Okay,
good number.
so what is your percentage of building aid? What do you get?
10%.
10%. And on the UPK aid, you only get that money if, based on a head count. Am I correct?
Correct.
If it's $15,000 a kid, you only get at 62 children, or
72.
72 children, you would get that money. You don't get it, so it's not a direct $4.3 million, because you're not going to get all $1 million at 72 children.
I'm not following your math, but what I'm
So
just saying is we received,
The
if we're
approval-
talking about the UPK, right? We received the amount of UPK about 1,021,000. So that was an increase of 54.73%. So the number of students that we enroll will get the amount of money for each student.
But you don't, so are you saying that the $1 million, let's say,
Yeah.
is divided amongst 72 children, and that's the head number? If you only got 36, you would have gotten double that per child? Or is it a per child
Per
number
child
that,
amount.
to maximize out at
Yeah,
$1 million?
So if we had, so let's say I had more room and we had more people enrolling, then we can go up to
A
that
million.
amount.
So the question is, how much are you getting per child?
10,000, 10,000 per child.
And you had no outside schools apply
No,
for it?
yeah.
Okay.
We did an RFP and we didn't receive any.
Any additional? Okay, and could we get a breakdown of the expense side of the budget?
The expense side would be on the next, right, on the next presentation? On March 25th.
Will you give a line-by-line expense budget at that point? Or can we foil it so you don't have to
After
bring?
it's adopted, we post it online.
No, I'm not waiting. I mean, prior to
Okay,
its adoption, is it possible to get an expense budget line?
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
We used to give them out at budget meetings.
We checked pretty much all the presentations. I mean, whatever was given before, we are giving that and more. But like I've done with you personally before, I'll provide everything that you need. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
hiding anything.
I'm not,
What
I'm not
doing
implying
over
that, I
here-
just
No,
want to
let me
be.
finish 1 second, because what I'm doing over here, I'm studying, and I've been questioned on, we had 2 half-day, we got 2 full-day under my leadership. Now we have 4 classes, we have a full classroom, we're $2.5 million on the budget, and I'm being questioned like I'm hiding something. We are providing everything and more than it was ever done before, and trust me, I've looked at every single presentation over the past 10 years. So, but that's okay. Whatever you need, whatever will make you or any community member comfortable, I will provide, because I want the community members to know that this district is in great hands because of my leadership.
So
That's
I,
my opinion, I guess.
yeah, so Dr. Yanni,
Yeah.
the questions aren't meant to make you feel that we don't trust you.
You've been in this seat, so you know
I know
that you ask me
exactly.
questions. Okay.
Exactly.
I
It's so
apologize.
that I, myself, and I'm not sure, I can't speak for anybody else, are knowledgeable about where the money is being spent. My money, my tax dollars, my right.
That's right.
Okay? I don't mean to question you so that you feel defensive, but I will state, with board members who were on the board with me, there were line-by-line budget numbers with expense-driven lines that broke down all the different categories within the budget handed out to any community member. In addition to that, if you go back years, we had a budget forum day that lasted 8 hours that went line by line by line, so I understand what you're saying. Right now, the information that is given is less than transparent.
I want you, but can I say something?
Okay, so
I want you to know that since last time we spoke, I took time to go over every single public presentation, and my district clerk and my assistant took time to go to every single board meeting. I know you're shaking your head.
I
I don't
am.
know what took place in executive session or on other
Not-
sessions, but what I could tell you is that from a public perspective, I've looked at every presentation, and my presentation, all my presentations are a lot more comprehensive from what I see in public. If it happened behind the scene,
There-
you were
so-
giving out information, I don't know, I can't
So
speak for that.
it was never discussed in executive session, and there were line-by-line budgets. I mean, I
Are
don't,
they still all online, all those presentations?
no. I don't even think
They've
we
never
were
been
online
online.
back then.
But wait, I think we're saying the same thing. We're going
No.
to provide the line-by-line expense budget to the community, right? At
And
the point where it's
I'm
adopted.
also willing to
Okay.
provide anything that any community member will need to feel comfortable on approving this budget, because with a fluctuation on the CPI that we have seen, if we can bring that presentation up, is one of the slides. With the fluctuation on the CPI, 2.3, 7.1, 6.2, 3.3, and the budget that we passed with all the programs and all the initiatives, I think we have managed the money, but I'm always open to be even more transparent. So if there is something that I'm missing that I should be put forth for the community to feel comfortable that we are managing the money correctly, I'm all for it. And on top of that, I also want to notice for the public listening at home that for the past 3 years, we had a clean audit, which is something that I never had before. And that's not because of me, because I don't know anything about finance. But my people, my team, they are just meticulous. So whatever you need, that's my answer. Whatever you need, whatever line by line we need before the adoption, I will make sure that it's something that we can share, and I will share, because I have no problem. So,
Okay, fine. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Okay, let's move on to approval of appointment of officers. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the appointment of officers listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to approval of instructional personnel items. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the instructional personnel items as listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to approval of non-instructional personnel items. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the non-instructional personnel items as listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Let's move on to approval of business items. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the business items as listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Approval of special services resolutions. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the special services resolution as listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to amend the agenda to add the following items. 13.13, new business settlement agreement and release. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes and approves a settlement agreement and release with a certain parent known to the Board of Education, which has been executed by such parent on February 24th, 2025. Be it further resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute said agreement. Do I have a motion? Second? Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 13.01, approval of new business resolutions. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education of the Oyster Bay East Norwich Central School District hereby approves the new business resolutions as listed in their entirety. Do I have a motion? Second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Dr. Yanni, the elimination of the two girls' athletic teams, I assume it's because there was a lack of numbers?
That's correct.
Like in order to...
That's correct.
run. So, did most of the students that in the JV teams, these two JV teams, will they be playing varsity? Or...
I'm not sure, but I will follow up and get back to you.
Okay. And if you could also just let us know why we think those numbers have decreased.
So when you look at the JV softball, that number has been pretty much, that team, for the past couple of years, we never had it. So that number is not there. And I believe that the second one is the same, but I will verify and get back to you.
Yeah, I think we added the JV badminton team just a few years ago because we had a very large number of girls who wanted to join, so I wonder if it's went down. So all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Now I have the opportunity for the public to be heard on non-agenda items. Is anyone signed in? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second.
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.